Now we'll continue in this section where we're looking at statistical graphs. We're going to look at a different type of graph, and that graph is what is called a frequency polygon. So a frequency polygon is a type of line graph, and on the x-axis, which remember is going to go across, on the x-axis you're going to have your midpoints. So the midpoints are going to be down here. And on the y-axis, which is the vertical axis, the one that goes up and down, you're going to have your frequencies. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at an example and see about constructing a frequency polygon. So remember that your midpoints are going to be used for your x, and your frequencies are going to be used for your y. So I want to begin by going ahead and marking off the midpoints across the bottom of the graph. Now note that I have 5 midpoints, and so I'm going to need 5 tick marks. But what I want to do is when I draw these tick marks, I want to give a little extra room at the beginning and a little extra room at the end. So I might do something like this. I might put my first tick mark here and then decide on some spacing and try to be consistent with the spacing, and leave a little extra space here and a little extra space at the end. All right, so once I do that, then I'm going to put the numbers underneath. So my first midpoint is 69. Then I have 196. I have 323, 450, and 577. And remember that you need a label, and if you know what your data represents, then you can use that. If you don't, then you should just put class midpoints. Now for the frequency on the y-axis, we need to determine a scale that we can use. Since the highest frequency is 16, all right, we could probably count by 5s. I don't need extra space here, so I would just want to mark off my 4 tick marks equally spaced, and then I'll use an F as a label. Remember, F stands for frequency, and that's pretty well accepted. Now, when I draw my line graph, I'm going to draw points. So the first point is going to use a midpoint of 69 and a frequency of 16. So above the 69, I'm going to place a point up about the 16, so maybe right about here. For the 196, the point's going to be at 3. So above the 196, we'll go to 3 and place a point. The next two are at 0, and so points at 0 are going to sit right on top of this x-axis. And then the last one, 577, has a frequency of 1. So above the 577, we'll put a point at 1. Now we want to connect those points with straight line segments. So your graph will end up looking something like this. And once you get your points connected, then the next thing that you want to do is you want to pull both ends of the graph back down to the x-axis. And you want to do it at the place where the next tick mark would have occurred and where the previous tick mark would have occurred. For example, if I had one more tick mark after the 577, given my spacing, it would likely be right about here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my graph down to the x-axis right there. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to erase that tick mark because the tick mark shouldn't really be there. Didn't mean to erase the other part of the line, but the tick mark shouldn't really be there. It should just show at about that same distance. And then we're going to do the same thing on the left-hand side. So where would the previous tick mark have been? Maybe right about here. And so I'm now going to take my graph and straight line straight down to that tick mark, and then we'll erase that tick mark. Okay, and that will complete our graph. All right, so I want to show you one more example of a frequency polygon. All right, we're going to do exactly the same thing. Remember that the midpoints are going on the X and the frequency has the Y's. All right, so we're going to mark off those 5 tick marks. Remember to leave a little extra space at the beginning. We're going to write the numbers underneath. So starting with 465, and then 546, 627, 708, and 789. We're going to use a label, either class midpoints or something descriptive to our data set. For our frequencies only go up to 11, so you can either count by 2s or 3s or 1s, whatever the case may be. Remember, you don't need extra space here. Just mark them off. I'm going to count by 1s. And we'll put F to the side to indicate frequency. And then we're going to plot points. So our first point is going to be above the 465, and it's going to be up at 11. Our next point above the 546 will be at 5. Then we have 627 and 3. 708 and 0. And then 789 and 1. Once you get your points plotted, then remember you're going to connect to those points with line segments in between each set of 2 points. Once that's done, you're going to imagine where the next tick mark would have been. So for example, maybe right here. And you're going to pull your graph down to that point. And then you're going to erase the tick mark. At the beginning of the graph, you'll do the same thing. Where would the previous tick mark have been? Maybe right there. And you're going to pull your graph down to that point. And then erase the tick mark. All right, so that completes our discussion on constructing a frequency polygon.